quorum. I see April, I see Mike. I see Councilman Rock. All right, very good. Looks like we have most folks here. Okay. We are recording. All right, so good evening. I'd like to call the February 4, 2021 meeting of the University Heights Planning Commission to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Brennan.
Here.
Mrs. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Szymborski.
Here.
Mr. Fine.
Here.
Mr. Rock.
Here.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes from the January 7, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I have a comment or correction on page 2. Oh, I lost it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, starting with Mr. Rock. Mr. Rock commented that it should be a sidewalk, that a sidewalk be added in the middle.
Where is that? How far down?
About 4 paragraphs down on page 2.
Oh, where it says sideway. Okay, so sidewalk. Right, that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Are there any other corrections, changes? Okay. If there are not, is there a motion to approve these minutes with that correction?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Very good. Motion by Mr. Rock. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Szymborski. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Brennan.
Yes.
Mrs. Urban.
Yes.
Mr. Fine.
Yes.
Mr. Szymborski.
Yes.
Mr. Rock.
Yes.
Okay. What minutes are approved? We're getting some interference from 98129. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next is item A, recommendation to City Council for site plan approval from Canez Homes for the South Taylor Place condominiums on South Taylor Road. We have Michael David from Canez Homes, Hannah Cohen Plessner, also looks like we represent landscape or Garrett. I'm sorry, we have Garrett Lapping also. Mr. David?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor.
You have the
Commission members, thank you for your time this evening. We're back here after tabling our presentation a few weeks ago. There were a couple of items that were brought up that we wanted to take some time to take a look at. There was an alternate site plan proposed by one of the commission members, which we did take a look at with our architects. They mocked it up to see if it was something that would be feasible for us. So we took that as well as some of the other items that were brought up into consideration. Some we were able to address, others we were not. Before we go into the changes that we've made, I would like to just give everyone, again, an understanding of what we're doing here. It's a 30-unit townhome development on South Taylor. It's in a residential attached district, which we comply with the code as written. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah to go over some of the changes we made following our meeting a couple weeks ago.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
There's a lot of feedback, Mayor. The audio is not very good.
Oh, I hear just fine. I don't know if anybody else having difficulty with their audio. Okay.
All right, yes, just me.
All right. Sorry, Mike. All right, Ms. Plessner, please.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, please. Kelly, thank you.
So I just wanted to go through, Mike mentioned that, we tried to, we appreciate all the feedback we got previously. We tried to accommodate what we could within reason without changing things that would make this project a little bit less viable for us. So I'm just going to go through a quick summary of what's changed and then open it up for questions. So the first changes we made were to do with the site plan. We had some feedback that there was a desire for a pedestrian walkway between units 4 and 5 here coming off of Taylor. So we've added a walkway there. And then when it crosses into the drive lane, we would designate that as a pedestrian area by using a stamped concrete. So it would be differentiated from the drive lane. That gives a clear path for pedestrians if they do choose to go that way, but it also leaves that access open for safety vehicles if they need that extra width to get into the site. The other tweak on the site plan we did was we added additional concrete sort of kickouts at the end of these 2 drives at units 8 and 22. There was some concerns with cars being able to turn around, so we added a little bit of an extra extension of that drive, so there's a little bit more room for those end units to back up and turn around when they're coming out of their garages.
Mhm.
And the bigger change that we were able to make was, this is our old elevation for units 1 through 8. These are the units that front on Taylor in the more commercial side of the project. We had a lot of conversation about the roof decks and what kind of views we were going to be getting. So we did decide to make a change on these 2 buildings so that we're looking at more of a flat roof style. And these are the units that also have the brick on them. So we think the brick with the flat roof actually fits really well with the commercial district. And what this allows is this gives all of these units a roof deck. So they're not optional on these. These 8 units will have a roof deck no matter what. And it orients those decks to the front of the units. And these 8 units, we believe, are the ones that will have the best city views as they're oriented the right way to be facing downtown. So these units will have those front-facing decks to activate the street corridor on Taylor, as well as maximize any available city views. The rest of the units throughout the interior of the site and on Wynn would keep their gabled roofs in the front of the unit, so they fit with the residential character of the neighborhood, but they would have the optional roof deck on the rear that we showed previously. So it would either be a full gabled roof, or if the client selects it, the front of it will have the look of a gabled roof, again, to fit in with the community, and a roof deck on the rear of the unit. The other change that we did is we got feedback on the 4 units to the north of our site that look out over that open green space right now, that we should add some more windows to that. So we were able to add some more windows to these side elevations, and we added a bay which lands in the dining room of the floor plan. So there's a little bit more of an architectural feature there. There's a bump out you can see here. This is the side of the flat roof unit at the front. So this would be unit 8, but it would be similar on the units that have the gable roofs that face that green space as well. And then this is just a plan of how that roof deck works for those front units. So you can see you come up into just a little, we call it a doghouse usually. It's basically just a landing at the top of the stairs that takes you out onto your roof deck and gives you that big open flat roof. I'm gonna just go to the rendering. So this has the gable roof still on it, but the intention is for those to be the flat roofs, and then the units behind would be revised. I'm sorry, would remain the same. So that's a summary of the changes that we were able to make. We hope that that can alleviate some of the concerns that were raised previously. And we are hopeful that we can move forward to the next step of our process after our meeting tonight.
Hannah, can you go back to the site plan for a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to bring up a couple of items that played into our consideration of some proposed alternate designs as well as why we made some of the choices that we did for the site plan. So this site has a lot of utilities and easements running through it. If you notice at the northern part of the site, there is what was requested by engineering, an 8-foot, I don't believe there's technically an easement on it, but we wanted to provide clearance so that the sewers that are on the northern part of the site could be accessed. Additionally, we didn't want to bring the units into Cleveland Heights because the city had requested that we maintain it within University Heights so that the project can be controlled by University Heights. If it were to go in there, there was some concern that they would have a say in the project as well, which would potentially delay the project, and we'd have conflicting opinions from different cities on what they may want. Additionally,
Mike,
the
can I interrupt you there for 1 second on the
Absolutely.
Cleveland Heights issue? There were really two main concerns that we had about encroachment into Cleveland Heights. One was opening the project, or at least a portion of it, up to Cleveland Heights approvals on the site plan, which we thought could get thorny. And then the other significant issue is that all of the land in University Heights is within a community reinvestment area and therefore eligible for tax abatement. Whether the land in Cleveland Heights is eligible for tax abatement or not is unknown. And so it could create some uncomfortable tax issues for potential owners of the property, as well as a developer moving forward.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you for clarifying that. The other issues that were brought up in our discussions in the preliminary talks with the city were the desire to keep the sidewalk connection from Wynn Road over to Taylor, as well as the desire to keep the community from becoming a cut through from Taylor to Wynn. So we didn't want to extend the driveway all the way through. Finally, and Hannah can talk about it more, I believe, if you were to have additional questions, but there are also some steep grades on this site, which turning the units so they went horizontal instead of vertical, if you're looking at the site plan as it's laid out currently, would cause some grading issues with how we're laying out the units. So I just wanted to point that out for everyone, that there were certain other factors that we took into consideration when how we were designing the site.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. David. I really appreciate, on behalf of the administration, the responsiveness here. I know that there were commission members who weren't necessarily privy to the pre-administrative review that administration did with representatives of the applicant with regard to certain goals and concerns that the city was concerned with. Mr. McConville has brought up some of those things. Certainly, even if the abatement issue could be worked out with Cleveland Heights, it is certainly less complicated to keep the project, the construction of the project itself, the structures that people will be living in a single municipality. A tax abatement is for a limited period of time. The municipal boundary is presumably indefinite. So there could continue to be issues. We do have in other parts of the city issues where structures do straddle municipal boundaries, and it's led to some disagreements or issues that could have been avoided if simply the structure had been built on one side of the line or the other. Likewise, University Heights adopted certain zoning, and I appreciate that no variances are needed, that this follows the zoning that the city adopted, and that this does substantially, this does meet what we had envisioned administratively for what we would see in this corner of the city. that this is what we had been working toward. And I believe that the applicant has brought a high quality project worthy of this city, bringing a form of housing that we do not presently have in the mix. And I am delighted to be able to give it my full support. Mr. McConville, are you raising your hand?
That was inadvertent.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy though to talk and take it one, excuse me, take it one step further from a legal standpoint. I think that it does make sense to just note that we are presented with a site plan that is a permitted use for the zoning district in which it's situated, and it is a site plan that is a no variance site plan. We have conducted pre-administrative review with the applicant. In addition, we, I think, have tested the boundaries in terms of how far the developer is willing to go. They have made changes to the site plan in response to concerns that were raised by the Planning Commission on the one hand, and on the other hand, they've provided some reasonable explanations in connection with other elements that they're not willing to change. I do get concerned anytime it seems as though either of the municipalities I represent is about to not approve a no variance permitted use site plan. I think Planning Commission's role is limited at this point, and like the mayor, from a legal standpoint, I would encourage approval of the site plan.
Mr. McConville, I just want to respectfully disagree that you, not that I'm going to disapprove of this project, because I'm certainly excited to see it happen, but as it currently stands, there's what, 7 or 8 parcels. So unless they're consolidated, at this point they're not, it does not meet the zoning requirements. So the City Planning Commission has the ability to approve or disapprove the project as it currently stands if there are concerns amongst the commission.
Well, that's an interesting point of view. I mean, the fact is that this is a residential attached district. It's the only residential attached district in the city. Residential attached district regulations were reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. It was contemplated all along that the parcels would be conveyed in combination together to a single developer for development of the site plan. The site plan is not a site plan that requires variances, and the site plan is the kind of development that the district allows. So I'm just putting that out there. I mean, I think, you know, at this point, the developer owns the parcels. So it would be, well, that's all I'll say. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mr. Rocco.
I have a comment about the site plan. So, and first of all, I really want to thank the presenter for taking most of the considerations into account. It's a much big improvement. I love the roof decks facing downtown Cleveland. I think those are going to be wonderful units, and I'm glad all 8 of those will have that. Those will probably be worth a lot more money. So I'm very excited about that. And I appreciate the small bump outs you have between, what is that, unit 8 and 16 and 22 and 30 for some, for the backing out of the cars out of those garages. I'm curious as to why you didn't replicate that on the other side between 1 and 9. But furthermore, the issue of on-site guest parking is still a concern of mine. There's not one spot on this site plan for guest parking. Most developments like this have one spot for every 2 units, or they're in an urban setting in which you can park on the street, like in Ohio City, Tremont, Gordon Square. My firm is doing a lot of these developments and where you can't get on-site parking, that you can park right in front of your unit. Now, you could park on Wynn. I don't know what side of the street you're allowed to park on. I don't know where the fire hydrants are. So I would hope that we could designate parking on Wynn dedicated to some of those units. And then on Taylor Road, I went past and there was a sign that says no parking. So I would like the city to be open to allowing parking along Taylor Road, to allow parking of guests between certain of those units between 1 and 8. But it still begs the question of whether we need on-site parking, and I think we do. If one of these units has guests over, or they have a repair, and a repair van has to come, or the cable guy has to come, or somebody to maintain these units, they're not going to want to walk from Raymont or Washington and to go to unit 8. I mean, they're just not going to want to do that. And I think between units 12 and 19, if one of those went away, you'd have 29 units, but you could fit, it looks like about 5 or 6 parking spots there. And between that and parking on Taylor Road, I think would satisfy that. Will those developments still work with 29 units? Most likely. It looks like you're maximizing your profit on this site, that what it'll generate. With one less unit, is it going to end the day? I don't think so at all. But I think it would give at least a small amenity to the people who live there to at least have some on-site parking for their guests.
Councilman Rock, if I could, the no parking sign is the Cleveland Heights border. Everything south of the border is University Heights and allows parking on the street on South Taylor Road.
Okay. And that's 24 hours you could park there, or what?
City ordinance, you cannot park overnight without police approval.
But that approval is readily obtainable.
Right, but I'm saying like it's not, you can't during rush hour. Can you park there during rush hour?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't make it to that side of town very often, but I'm assuming some of the businesses would want to be able to use parking along the street as well.
So NOACA just did they did a vehicle parking study about 2 years ago in relation to the TLCI plan for South Taylor Road. And there is usually 50 to 70% of the parking spots available at all hours of day, rush hour, morning commute, anytime.
So if I were a resident of this neighborhood, I would like to see that, it's permit parking for the street parking, that I can give my guest a tag to put on their mirror or something, so that it looks like you could fit, let's see, 1, 2, at least 8 cars in front of those 8 units. But if we can mandate that to be permit parking, well, that's 8 spots right there.
But one of the things that we did discuss administratively was the possibility that we would have tags that would be issued to the owners of these units, so that to help facilitate street parking. Whether those tags would be exclusive or simply accorded, other considerations is something that we can discuss and handle further. It looks like Michael David's raised his hand. Mr. David, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize that we didn't bring this up in our summary earlier. That was another item that Hannah sent over some materials at the request of one of the commission members prior to today's meeting, showing many of our townhome developments, which for those of you that know Canez, Ohio City, Tremont, Gordon Square is our bread and butter. That's where we have the majority of our townhome developments. And I know she has it if you guys would like to see it. We don't have guest parking on any of those sites. And the ones that are constructed and completed are all sold out. And it's not something that we found that the residents of townhomes in city living typically feel that they require. So I just wanted to bring that to the commission's
And I
attention.
appreciate that. And I went to your website and looked at all the developments that you have in those Ohio City and Tremont. I looked at the sites, and you can park in front of the units, at least on the street. There's street parking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is.
I would say those neighborhoods are typically less parkable than this area of University Heights.
I don't doubt
across
that a bit, but this is like a dead end development where there's one way in, one way out, which is the same way in. So it's a little bit of a different setup. There's only there's 16 units that face a street. So half of the units do not face the street.
If it's of interest, I would be happy to go through some of our other successful townhouse projects that have similar setups, just give you a general idea of what our typical townhome developments look like.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can share. All right. Just give you a brief overview. This is one of our projects. This is actually in the heart of downtown. This is 27 units, no guest parking. This is an up and coming project in the Glenville neighborhood. This is going to be
Can you go
36.
back to the last one?
Mhm.
So you say no guest parking, but you can park along East 14th. That's Masthead to the left, right? The bar.
Yeah, it's down 2 blocks.
Well, I
2 blocks.
park there all the time. I park along East 14th Street, and there's
Mhm.
parking available there, and I think there's some on.
There is street parking, that's correct,
Street
but there's no dedicated on-site parking for our units
But
specifically.
there's street parking, is what I'm-
It's, yeah, just like we have in University Heights, it's street parking.
but not really, because it's very limited.
We have parking. We have
We
parking.
really don't have enough parking now.
All right. Well, just to run through a few more, this is in Glenville. This is a more residential setting. This is 36 units with, again, no on-site guest parking.
The Wade Park Avenue is such a wide street, you could park on both sides of the street.
I don't.
As an
that area.
employee of the university, I can speak to the lack of parking in that particular area.
But you can park on either side of the street.
No, it's forbidden. It's blocked off. It's
Is it,
forbidden.
what is it, a permit?
Permit only.
Oh, so they're getting permit parking,
Not employees of the university.
but the residents.
Or guests. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Residents could.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
That's
But not guests.
What I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought you were talking about guests. So
Yeah.
guests would be a no.
So this is an example in Ohio City. This is another one curb cut development where everyone comes in and goes out the same way. It's a little bit smaller, but a different kind of configuration. This is a 4-unit, again, just one way in, one way out in a pretty residential setting. This is in Lakewood, so it's kind of a similar inner ring suburb. Not a lot of street parking, but street parking. This was 9 units. We have no issues. This sold out very quickly. This is a 6-unit development we have in Ohio City. Again, you can see it's very dense urban neighborhood. We didn't have any concerns or issues here. This is one of our most successful developments. This is in Duck Island. Again, no on-site parking. There is limited street parking on 19th Street and ample street parking on the blocks around there. This is in the Detroit Shoreway neighborhood. This is 9 units. Again, one way in, one way out. This is sold out. This is a proposal we have going in Ohio City for 12 units. Again, one way in, one way out. This is one of our upcoming projects that we are very excited to start construction on in the next couple of weeks, actually. This is 56 units going in Ohio City. This is a residential neighborhood. There is street parking and one of our goals with this project is to create density, promote transit use, promote walkability, bikeability. And the city was, very excited about this and certainly not interested in adding surface parking to it. And this is just one last one. This is also in the Glenville neighborhood near University Circle. This is 18 units, again, with a single curb cut entrance. And we do have bike parking on site. We have bike racks, again, to promote the walkability, bikeability of the neighborhood over encouraging more vehicular traffic. So there's just a couple similar projects. I will say this is, this is something we do all the time. We've been very successful with our townhome developments. This has not been an issue for us, and we don't expect that it's going to be a roadblock for this project in University Heights.
Thank you, Ms. Plessner. I think it's worth noting that throughout the U1 and U2 districts that many of our guests use street parking now, and this is a density type project where though University Heights is second only to Lakewood in density generally. The thing is that most of our houses sit further back in our lots. I know certainly mine does. Mine's up a hill, and I have folks that will park on the sidewalk, or not the sidewalk, excuse me, on the street and walk up the hill. And that distance, from the street to my side or back door is comparable to those middle units on this project. I mean, you have to appreciate that this is a small area. So when we're talking about parking on Wynn Road or on Taylor and then walking into the middle, we're not talking about that far at all. And there is parking, I believe, on both sides of South Taylor. Yes, there is.
And I'll just add into that point. When I lived in Tremont, I lived a block away from the main strip. Townhouses everywhere, old houses everywhere. I lived in the back house on a lot. I didn't have a driveway. It was all street parking. And sometimes you park a block away, sometimes you park 3 blocks away, but you park and you make your way to your unit.
I understand and I appreciate that, but these are going to be $300,000 or $400,000 townhomes. And for someone to spend that kind of money and not have on-site parking it's just unheard of. And you guys will develop this land and then you're going to walk away and hope it's successful in the beginning, but we're going to be stuck with this forever. And if it does not fit within the community standards of having the ability to have an overnight guest or have a repair person come to your home, then we're stuck with that. And I can't approve it without at least a few on-site parking spots. If one unit has to go away, then one unit has to go away. It's still going to be a viable project in the end. You're getting the land for free, and the tenants are going to have tax abatement. It's still going to be a very well executed financial project for you guys.
I would just like to reiterate that we do know our customers well, and we are confident that this is not a roadblock for us selling these units at all. If we thought it would make them more saleable, it would be something to be considered, but we think there's more value in having units and having green space than having surface parking on the site. And that's value to the residents. If it were me, I wouldn't want parking spots right up against my unit. I would prefer there to be someone else's front door. I would prefer windows. I would prefer landscaping and green space. And we're comfortable that we know our customers and that they understand when they buy units like this, that there are limitations, that they are looking at a more urban lifestyle. They're looking at a more transit-oriented lifestyle, which is also a more sustainable approach that we support. And I would also just like to reiterate that there's no requirement for guest parking. We are fully complying with the zoning code. We are complying with the intent of it. And for us, it does not make sense for us on this project to take away more valuable resources from the future tenants to provide surface parking.
Yeah, I would note that, yes, the zoning, you're right, Ms. Plesner, the zoning for this, for residential attached in University Heights does not have a guest parking space requirement. And, you know, relating similarly to what Mr. Zach was talking about, when my wife was in grad school in Columbus, we had a separate residence in Clintonville where it was very dense like this, and it was only street parking for guests. And anytime I went to visit her, I would have to park much like what you did here, and I would have to get a permit and display it in order to park overnight. And that's what we did. And it was part of that kind of living. And when you rent or buy into an area that is like that, then you're buying into a kind of lifestyle that has that. You know, if it's whether it's because you're younger or because you're more active and you're willing to walk a little bit, and you have a lifestyle where you're going to walk the neighborhood, and you're maybe less dependent or less interested in your car. And at the same time, there is street parking on both sides of this proposed development that exists already on those streets. We've obviously seen in other communities where this applicant has built that they have not done away with additional units in order to provide parking, because there are other opportunities to park off the site and near the site. This is the kind of development that we were seeking to have, you know, something that was similar to Ohio City, to Tremont, and so on. And if we want that kind of development, this is one of the features of that. And you know, I've thought about that. I've thought about, you know, what was said, you know, and I went back and I walked the site again and realized that these distances are not far. So you park on Wynn, you park on Taylor, and then you walk into the middle of the field, and it's not far at all. So I am satisfied after some consideration that we didn't, that this is fine, with the parking that is there, to not have parking in the middle of what is supposed to be a nice little closed community.
Can I ask a question? Is this being built all in one phase? Is it dependent on sale before it's being built? How is that process or timeline planned so far?
Mr. David or Ms. Plesner, who would like?
Sorry. It'll be built in phases. That's one of the reasons we like the buildings with 3 or 4 units. So we would likely start on Taylor and work our way east across the site. We'll get into the logistics of it when we get a little bit further down the line. Typically, we try to pre-sell half of a building before we start construction. So if we start the first one, we've got 2 sales in the next one. That would kind of be our trigger point. But we also have timeline commitments to the city too that we fully plan to meet.
Yeah,
If you find yourselves unable to build unit 23, for example, would you consider, you know, because all of the folks buying said, we really need guest parking, would you consider a guest parking lot if that unit remained unsold for whatever reason?
I guess I won't say no to that. That's never happened to us on a project ever. So I doubt that that's going to be something we have to seriously consider, but I would say, I suppose we would be open to that.
Is there a feedback loop? It sounds like there would be a feedback loop. You're selling units, you're building them, you're hearing from your clients and your potential clients. If you heard, we would love this, but we're missing parking, it sounds like there's a feedback loop there that you could respond to the market in that scenario.
It's It's possible, but again, I don't think that's ever happened to us, and we're doing this all over the place. So I don't think it's likely that would be a scenario.
If it appeared to you to be a smart business decision because the market, as you got into the project, was telling you that, you would have the ability to make that decision?
I guess it might depend on the city too. If we are going through, all these steps for a process and approvals, we might not want to come do it all again just to lose a unit that we think we probably still can sell to someone else. So it might be that we just keep reaching out to other buyers, and try to make it work. If it were to be a huge problem, certainly we're open to considering it, but I find that scenario to be highly unlikely.
One thing I wanted to add, just going back to Ms. Urban's initial question about timing, just as a reminder to Planning Commission members and also for the benefit of the public, the land was assembled with the cooperation of the school district. The school district owned several parcels of the land that they essentially gifted to the city's Community Improvement Corporation. In connection with that transaction, the school district negotiated time horizons over which the development had to be completed. And if it's not, then they have reversionary interests by deed in the land. So the developer will be under some time pressure. I don't think it's too extreme. I think at this point it might be about 3 years in which to fully complete the development. So there are some sort of built-in assurances that the developer isn't going to build a partial development and then sit and hold it, because they'll lose the ownership of the land if they do that.
Okay. Floor is open. Does anybody have a question or a comment? Is there a motion? Joe, it looked like you were going to say something. Were you about to?
Hey, Luke,
You have the floor.
they are going to come back with a plat. Does that have to come back to Planning Commission? Because they're going to have to, I assume, consolidate, and then these are going to be zero clearance lot lines, I think. Is that what you're going to do? And then sell the units that way? And then you have common area?
That's correct.
So that has to come back to Planning Commission, correct?
Yeah, and we discussed that with them. I think they indicated a desire to obtain site plan approval first before they had their engineers drop the plat work.
Right, because there would be a consolidation plat and then a subdivision plat.
Yes. And Mr. Rock had that concern, and that is something that has to be taken care of before we can issue permits, right?
Mr. Fine.
Yeah, just a technical question. How is it possible to consolidate the property and register a plat if it's possible that the school district can come back and take back a lot?
Well, that would be, you're touching on a nerve a little bit there, because that was the subject of some exhaustive discussions with the school district's lawyer. And frankly, the risk there lies mostly with the school district, but they would go back to their meets and bounds relating to the parcels they conveyed and overlay that with the new lot lines that are developed in connection with the lot
It
split
would,
plat, and then they would file their lawsuit, Michael, to reclaim lands that they claim they conveyed.
and what, it would result in a lot split then?
Or conveyance, or simple conveyance
Okay.
back. I mean, that the whole point is for the developer to avoid that. That's going to be a messy, expensive legal dispute if they don't develop the property. And that's kind of the point. So Canez is walking into the project with their eyes wide open on that. The time horizon that's in place is one that they haven't objected to. And we have reason to believe, because of the potential for a messy, expensive legal dispute if the property isn't developed, that it will be developed.
Curious, how long is the tax abatement and is it a full abatement? Just curious.
Under current CRA, it would be a 15-year, 100% tax abatement on any improvements or increase in value from the project.
So anybody who lives there is not paying property tax.
On the
They
structure.
pay property tax for the land, but not the structure.
Correct.
Say that again, Brendan?
They would pay the property tax for the land, but not the structure.
So like
But before this project, this was school and city-owned property, so it was not generating any tax.
Yeah, the property tax bills are divided up into two pieces. One is the underlying land, and then the other is the improvements on the land. They will be obligated to pay tax on the land itself, and currently there is no tax being paid on any of that land. In addition, we have reason to believe that the underlying land value will increase once the improvements are made. So they won't be paying nothing. It won't be a lot. But I think everyone understands that once the 15-year time period is up, you'll take a substantial piece of land that's currently non-productive and have significant tax revenues generated from it. You will get the immediate benefit of income tax collected from the folks who buy the units and live there. Presumably, the thinking is that someone who can afford to buy a $350,000 townhome has a pretty good job, and will have to pay taxes. So there will be some immediate tax benefit, just not on the real estate tax on the improvements.
Also, per our agreement with the school district, it's anticipated that there will be revaluation of these lots with filing of the subdivision plan, and there would be taxes that would then be coming to the school district from going forward from that. And the school district stands to benefit very shortly, even with tax abatement on the structures, where they will be getting more money from this than they have in previously, because they weren't getting anything from this previously, and in fact they were having to pay to maintain this. So it does result in revenue nearly immediately for the school district, and also for the city. And there's also an arrangement between the city and the school district that if a certain threshold isn't met, that the city will contribute to the school district to help them reach that, provided we don't spend more than 50% of whatever the city's actually benefit that the city's actually getting. It's a little bit of a sliding scale, but it's something that protects the school district and at the same time protects the city, so that the school district is certain to get a certain amount of money, and the city is certain to supplement that if necessary to get them there. But we're not ever required to go into the red in order to do it. In fact, not even approaching the red, because we can't be responsible for paying out more than half of what we collect in order to make them whole.
Can I ask if there are, it looks like there are public attendees of the meeting. Is there a comment period, or people are free to ask questions if they have them, or?
Certainly, we could open it up for public comment. I see that as well, Mrs. Urban. If there's no objection, I might use this time to ask if there's any public comment or questions anyone from the public has. If you would raise your hand either using the Zoom feature, or if you physically raise your hand, I may be able to see that you're asking a question. Does anyone have a question? All right, well, I'm not seeing anyone, and yeah, I'm not seeing any raised hands electronically either, so. All right, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Urban. The floor is open. Well, if there's no further discussion, we could entertain a motion. I'm happy to make that motion. I would move that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council for site plan approval from Canez Homes for the South Taylor Place condominiums on South Taylor Road. Mr. McConville, is that motion adequate for our purposes?
Yes.
Very good. So I will have made the motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Second by Mr. Fine. Is there discussion on this motion? Okay. If there is no discussion, then Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mayor Brennan,
Yes.
Mrs. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Simborski,
Yes.
Mr. Fine,
Yes.
Mr. Rock.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. And this then will proceed to City Council. There being no other business before the Planning Commission, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rock. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Brennan,
Yes.
Mrs. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Simborski,
Yes.
Mr. Fine,
Yes.
Mr. Rock. Is that yes, Mr. Rock?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. We Commission scheduled a meeting for March 4th. I do believe there will be an agenda item. So see you in a month.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone from Canez for being here. Luke, will you call me or I'll call you? Thank you.